Hi guys, it's Ivo from mytestedasp.net. In this video we're going to continue with the Catstagram server and we're going to implement seeing other people's profiles, and we're going to validate that if they are private, the client should not receive all the information, and if they are public, of course, everything should be delivered. Before we begin, I would like to tell everybody who is new around here to subscribe to my channel and turn on the bell notifications, because I upload advanced C# lessons every week. Now, before we begin, I would like to commit all the changes from my previous video. Implemented profile searching. Good. And now to implement the option for other people to see our profiles, we're going to open the profiles controller and we're going to allow anonymously to be able to for people to open our profiles, because that's the original Instagram functionality. If you open a profile in an incognito tab, it will show some results. So let's do it by allowing this to be anonymously. Public async task action result. Details string ID. Of course, here we may want to make the request to be not by an ID but by the username. So, but it doesn't matter actually. If we rely on usernames, we won't be able to open the profile publicly, but that should be the client's responsibility to catch the username from the URL and pass its ID. Actually, I'm not sure how to do that exactly, so let's make it HTTP GET for now. Let's add, we won't need a route. Actually, we will need a route. We will need a route by the ID, which is the same as here. Where does, okay, using static, we need to add using static here. Okay, so now we have a route for the ID. If we want to allow anonymous users to open profiles, we may need to add additional routes. Let's leave it with ID for now. In the future, if we want to allow anonymous users to open a user profile, we're going to add another route on, or we're going to refactor this one. For now, let's leave it like that. We will need the ID in order to see different kinds of other people's profiles. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say, give me the profile by the provided ID. And I'm going to say that we're returning a profile service model. Let me check all the other controllers. For example, this is enumerable, this action result is not needed here. If we are not returning an actual action result, we don't need to specify it in the action return type. So let me check that everything is correct. Good. Get follows. Search. Okay, so we're just going to return the same thing in like with the mine profile, but this time we will need to consider having private profiles. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to say add new class public profile service model, which will have everything included in the for the current user, and we're going to have only a profile service model. So in the normal profile service model, we're going to leave name main photo URL and is private, and in the public we're going to have all data available. I'm going to say that this is profile service model, and I'm just going to add additional functionality here. So first things first, I'm going to add another variable to the service. I'm going to say bow all information equals false. In the profile controller, I'm going to say include all information, because no matter whether our profile is private or not, we always want to include everything for our own profile. But for other people's profile, it should not include everything. It should include only what we need. Bool include all information equals false by default. Good. So the logic here should be something like this: var query equals the user we are searching for. Then, if we need to include all information, like we said here, all information, we're going to say query equals, we're going to say return that. Otherwise, we're just going to say return query for the private profile. Only this. When we add automapper, this will become this method will become shorter, but for now we should leave it like this. Okay, so if we include all information, If we include all information, we should return everything. Otherwise, we should only return the private profile. But there's a catch here, and the catch is that we need to validate whether if all information is false, we need to validate whether we're following this account. If we're following the account, we need to include everything. But if we're not following the account, we should check whether it's private or not. So, we can even make it a little bit better by specifying something like this. If it's all information, includes this, otherwise include this. This will make our query a little bit shorter. Like this. So if we have all information, include the public profile, otherwise include the private profile. But then our controller should decide whether to include all information or whether to not include it. If we're taking our own account, we should always include all information. But otherwise, we need to check whether the profile is private, and we need to check whether we're following that account. Now, we may add the whole logic here. We may call the database and check whether the user is following the other user and so on, but then this method will make too much logic. It will not follow the single responsibility principle, because currently it just fetches information, and that's the whole idea behind that method. If we include following logic, if we include private logic, then it becomes a little bit bloated. So it's a better idea to have the profile controller validate whether the user is private, whether we follow the user, and so on. So what we need to add here is we need to say something like that. First, we need to see whether we follow this user. So I'm going to inject private read only I follow service follows like this, and I'm going to implement the follows method. Task.bool is follower. Check whether this user is a follower of this user. Let's implement that, and the whole logic should be await this data dot follows any async, we search for a follow which is approved, and the user ID is the provided user ID, and the follower ID is the provided follower ID. So essentially we search for that. We search for whether the user ID is, whether the user is followed by. It's a little bit tricky. I'm not sure how you guys prefer to write these statements on multiple lines, whether you preferred the end to be on the following line or in the previous line. It doesn't matter as long as it's uh, as it's the same throughout the whole solution, it will be fine. So we're looking for consistency, and I believe I put everything here. So let's leave it. I believe there's only one single place where I have the same thing here on the user profile searching. Whatever you like, as long as it's the same. It's consistent throughout the solution. Good, so we have the follow service ready, and what we also need is to make the logic in our profile controller. So first I'm going to say is follower. Await this follows is follower. So what I need to check is whether I am a follower of this profile I'm trying to find. So whether the currently logged user is a follower of this user we're trying to open. If we're not a follower, then we need to check whether the profile is private. So in the profile service, I'm going to add a new method called task of bow is private string user ID, and I'm going to implement it. Await this data dot profiles where the profile user ID is the provided user ID dot select profile is private dot first or default async. And in the profiles controller, we're going to ask var user is private That's a better name in my opinion. So let's change it. Var user is private. We're going to say await this profiles is private, and then the ID. I'm not sure whether this is the best query. We may use any async here instead of first or default. No, this is okay. Since okay, good. Follow service, profile controller. Okay, if the user is private, we need to don't allow. We need to not allow the all information. So I'm going to say var include all information. If we're a follower, if this returns true, we include all information. If we don't need to include all information, we check whether the user is private, and then we say include all information should be the opposite of that, whether the user is private, and then we're going to pass that. So the logic is include all information if we're a follower. And if we are not a follower, so if we don't need to include all information, check whether the profile is private. If the profile is not private, we can also make it like this. Select the opposite of the is private. So far, everywhere I'm using the is private, it's just it is not working. But maybe it was a better idea to name it is public and not it's private, but because if we open that, find all references, we will see that everywhere we search for it is opposite of the is private, but anyway. Okay, so the logic again, include all information if we're a follower. If we're not a follower, then we use the isPublic method, which is the opposite of isPrivate, and we will remove that. Include all information if we're a follower, and if we're not a follower, include all information if we're trying to access a public account. And then we just call the profiles by user with include all information. And that should be it. Before we test our solution, I would like to show you where you can find the source code of this video. Go to my GitHub profile, Ivailo Kenov. There's a link down below in the description. You may follow me if you like. Hit repositories, write down TV, and here you will find the repository in which I am uploading all my source code from all my video lessons. I will appreciate if you give me a star, and additionally you may watch the repository if you like, because I link every single video I'm uploading, and when I add a new video you will receive a notification. This way you're not going to miss any video from my channel. You can do whatever you like with this code. You can clone it, you can play with it, you can open a pull request. It's up to you. I would like to thank my sponsors. Also, Endeavor, 2K, Softuni, Smart IT, Noble Hair, and 1-Bit Software. A little, some words about Endeavor. Endeavor is a software development company which is constantly searching for new passionate developers. So if you're looking for a new opportunity, make sure you check their website out. And these are my GOAT sponsors: 2K, Softuni, Smart IT, Noble Hair, and 1-Bit Software. Thank you guys, you truly rock and motivate me to continue providing free knowledge on my YouTube. Now let's try to see different accounts. Currently we have a single profile which is not private, and it's for the current user. The current user we're trying to access. So if I go to the search query, server is not turned on. If we go to the search query and try to find something, for example, test, I will see an user ID. Then if I get /profiles /that ID, I should receive some information about that profile. Is private, false? So it seems to me that it works, but if it's not private, it should return the full information. So let's see what's going on here. I'm going to hit that. I'm not a follower. Then check whether the profile is false. The full profile is not public, so it should not include all information. Yeah, it should work correctly. But we need to check with another profile, which is, I'm going to going to try with the full profile. Here it is. It works as expected. So if I try to get a public profile, it should return everything. And if I try to get a private profile, it also should return only the smaller service model. Additionally, we may need to check for the followers, but we're going to do that when we implement the full followers functionality, because currently we don't have everything implemented yet. So for now, this should work correctly. In one of my future videos, I'm going to assert that the followers are working correctly and that the profile is not exposed. Additionally, we may add unit tests for this logic to validate that only valid information is shown. Okay, before we finish, I would like to invite you to my mentorship program, in which I am constantly putting new videos and additional lessons, you may check it. It's on patreon.com/Ivailukyanov. There's a link down below in the description, and I'm providing various perks for all my subscribers. For example, additional polls which allow you to vote for future lessons, live workshops, some guidebooks I've written. For example, this is a domain-driven design and clean architecture guidebook which has more than 70 pages, and many other exclusive videos. For example, Azure DevOps, a live workshop about model binding, RabbitMQs, gRPC, and many more. So you may consider joining this mentorship program. Okay, guys, we implemented seeing other people's profiles, and in the next video we're going to continue with the following logic. Stay tuned and bye for now.